If you could exchange your entire kingdom for just a drop of liquid, what choice would you make? The vile greed of Assam and the immense power of the Sultan that seems to mock that greed, the most grotesque yet brilliant face of humanity, which even the god of death is captivated by. On that fourth night, the story begins. In the stillness of the desert, you can feel the cold frost soaking the hem of Shara's garment. Squeak, the fourth candle that illuminates the life of tonight, has been lit. The smoke from this candle is particularly thick and red, evoking the illusion of freshly spilled blood scattering in the air. As the warmth of the blazing flame touched Shara's cheek, the voice of Nakshar came through the darkness, sounding joyful. "O blind woman, quickly, tell me the story of the merchant Assam who revealed his desires. Indeed, it is when humans fully expose their ugly desires that things become most interesting." Shara placed her hands on the altar and softly opened her mouth towards the weight of the unseen presence. "Naxar, it is as you say. The true nature of humanity is revealed only in the presence of gold and the scent of blood. Where a thief has been, traces are left. And where a murder has occurred, an indelible scent remains. Tonight, I will tell you about the murder, driven by greed and the greater evil that devoured that sin. To Assam, who caught the scent of money in the old woman's garden, it was no longer a mysterious sanctuary. It was merely a gold mine that endlessly spewed out expensive gold from the world. Assam went to find the old woman and offered to give her all his wealth if she would sell him the garden. He poured out a chest full of the vast gold coins and precious jewels he had collected over his lifetime, presenting the largest offer he could make. However, the old woman shook her head and ultimately rejected the proposal. This place is a graveyard of forgotten memories that have lost their owners, and a land where life can bloom again, which cannot be exchanged for any treasure in the world." The old woman's stern attitude stirred anxiety within Assam's heart, the fear that if he gave up the garden, other competing merchants might seize this mysterious space weighed heavily on him. In the end, Assam lost his composure and drew a sharp knife from within his cloak. He stabbed the old woman with a knife and strangled her frail neck, ultimately cutting off her breath. Without even being able to scream, the old woman collapsed onto the flowers she had tended, and the petals were soaked in her red blood. As Assam wiped the fishy blood from his hands, he believed that this splendid garden was entirely his. He buried the traces of the murder deep in the sand and picked a beautiful red flower that bloomed in the garden to visit the ruler of the desert, Sultan Jafar, in the palace adorned with gold and silver. The Sultan was instantly captivated by the mysterious fragrance of the flower brought by Assam. The Sultan promised that, "If you give me your entire garden, I will give you as much gold and treasure as you desire." And Assam led the Sultan to his garden with a victorious smile. However, the moment Sultan Jafar stepped into the garden and took a deep breath of its rich fragrance, a strange event occurred. The sweet and nostalgic scent quickly transformed into a nauseating smell of blood, and a horrific vision unfolded before the Sultan's eyes. The scene of Assam stabbing the old woman with a knife and choking her, along with the old woman's final gaze as she died in agony, was vividly recreated before the Sultan's eyes, as if it had happened just yesterday. The garden revealed the old woman's resentment in the most brilliant, yet cruel fragrance. For a moment, the Sultan was astonished by the strangeness, but soon his lips curled into a sardonic smile, and he commanded in a fiery rage to bind Assam. "You filthy murderer! How dare you kill the master of the sacred garden and try to deceive me? I will throw you into the deepest dungeon and ensure you never see the light again." Assam was dragged away in terror, and the Sultan seized the garden without paying a single penny, using the merchant's crime as an excuse. The merchant's vile greed was swallowed whole by the immense greed of greater power. The Sultan moved the garden to the palace courtyard and held lavish banquets every night, intoxicated by the fragrance, reveling in his authority. At that moment, the foreign merchant Qasim appeared in the middle of the banquet and whispered into the Sultan's ear like a snake. "O great Sultan, if you refine the essence of this flower with the forbidden alchemy across the sea, it will become the elixir of immortality that does not age. The kings across that sea would willingly sacrifice their kingdoms for just a drop of this potion, blinded by greed from the words that he could enjoy eternal pleasure. At the pinnacle of power, the Sultan lost his sight. The Sultan immediately gathered the largest ships in the desert to organize a fleet. He ordered that all the soil and flowers in the garden, even the stones stained with the old woman's blood, be loaded onto the ships. He also commanded his most loyal warrior, Tariq, to refine the flowers and make medicine. "Tariq, these flowers will soon be my immortality and the eternal glory of our empire. Let not a single flower wither." Tariq, having received the Sultan's command, boarded the fleet with a sense of responsibility for the sacred mission. The fleet set sail into the sea, becoming a massive garden filled with flowers. However, beneath the glamorous ships, the weight of forced suffering pressed heavily on the vessels. As the scented candle burned down past halfway, the silence of Naxar felt heavier than usual. The presence of Naxar looms low, casting a single question. It is greed directed towards the sea. Did that ship truly reach its destination? Shara slowly shook her head. Naxar, the sea was not generous enough to accommodate human greed. The fragrance emitted by the flowers summoned a massive storm, and before the great tide, greed was sinking helplessly. Before long, the wick of the scented candle began to burn its last flame, and the presence of Naxar also started to dissipate. A fleet that has encountered a storm. Tell me about what happened in the sea of death tomorrow night. As the presence of Naxar disappeared, a brilliant morning returned to the desert. As the heavy silence pressing down on the altar lifted, Shara pondered while gently touching the cold ashes left on the altar with her fingertips. The flowers that were loaded onto the ship, dreaming of greed, eventually became the splendid shrouds that bound their bodies. The truth is that a ship filled with greed cannot help but sink under its own weight. The loyal warrior Tariq, who set sail with the flowers of the garden, faces a sinking fleet in the midst of a fierce storm. What choice will he ultimately make? What if you could obtain the elixir of immortality? Please leave your thoughts in the comments.